That's a grasshopper sparrow up there. So my name is Charlie DeWitt. I'm an amateur nature photographer and bird watcher. I've combined these two passions since I retired in 2008. I take pictures of flowers, insects, dragonflies, and anything else I see when I'm outside. I particularly like the challenge of taking pictures of birds in flight. This program is about birds found in Michigan. Our state has over 400 species that have been here, seen here, and over 300 that are seen regularly. Birders use a website and app called eBird to record their sightings and locations throughout the year. You can bird places like Whitefish Point high up in the UP for hawks. It just happens to be a premier hawk migration place. Tawa State Park for warblers on the east side of the state, and right here in Muskegon County on the west side. Here in Muskegon County, we live in a unique location for birding. Our county is part of a band that extends across the middle of the state. Here we see birds from northern Michigan that will come as far south as Muskegon County to nest. The same is true of birds from the southern part of Michigan. Our county is as far north as they will come to breed. We also have several habitats and food sources available that attract a variety of birds. Habitats like the Lake Michigan shoreline, rivers, wetlands, and forests. Food sources like insect seeds, berries, corn, and fish also keep them in the area. Bird watching takes very little equipment. Binoculars are a must, along with a bird identification book. That's the one I keep in my truck. So it's there. Yeah, it's well traveled too. So the Sibley Guide to Birds and Peterson Guides to Birds. When I first started bird watching, I took my camera along. I like using an interchangeable lens camera, but my wife likes to point and shoot more, like the Sony there. The Nikon and some other manufacturers also make real good cameras for birding. When I get home, I check the ID books and learn the names and more about each species. I still do that. Later, I invested in a scope. I bought it used, and it really helps for distance, like out at the Wastewater looking for ducks or on Muskegon Lake and other places. I also have two apps on my phone. Sibley and Peterson bird guides. They have both have the same information, but you can play the bird songs. If you're not familiar with the song and you hear it, you can try and find it that way. Now let's start birding Muskegon County. The rest of the program will be visiting some of my favorite spots to bird and pictures of the birds I have seen there. At the end, we'll take time for some questions. The first place we're going to visit is the Muskegon County Wastewater. And it's a huge place. This all here, this way down here. It's a little over 8,000 acres. And the big lagoons, what they call the big lagoons, that's 7 miles around. So it gives you a lot of opportunity to see waterfowl. The wastewater is an active farm and of course wastewater system. So if you're going to go out there and bird, you're going to want to follow the rules and make sure if you stop to pull off the side of the road so that the vehicles can get through. And the address is Maple Island Road, but the administration building is about 1.5 miles west of, or east of that, on what's called White Road. So, but it's well marked off of Maple Island Road. There's no problem finding it. Red box is what they call the dry cells. That's important to remember. And then circles.
Oops, sorry, dude.
That's okay. The circles are just irrigation fields. So if you see a particular bird and you want to tell somebody where you saw it, you can say, you can mention the field number. So, okay. So here's some of the birds that I've seen out there. Golden eagle is a fairly common bird in the winter. Not always seen by everyone. I haven't seen one yet this year, but it's been reported. Bald eagles are very common out there, especially in the winter. Rough-legged hawk, a good identification mark on this rough leg is the black spots under the wings. You can see that from a great distance, and you know you got a rough leg. Here's a couple of northern harriers interacting.
What do you
Red-tailed hawk,
hear?
osprey. I was wondering what the osprey were doing. I've seen them there for the last couple of years. And I don't think there's any fish in the big lagoons. But this past week, I saw an osprey out there and he took a fish out of one of the creeks. So that's what he was. That's why he's there. This is the American kestrel. It's the smallest kestrel or falcon for Michigan. They like to eat mice. They also like to eat insects. If you look, you can see the grasshopper leg right there.
Oh.
So I've seen them eat big praying mantis and stuff. They eat a lot of bugs. This is just another American kestrel in flight. Savannah sparrows are common in the summer. That was the first one was a Vesper sparrow.
Oops.
That's a Vesper sparrow. Okay. And this is the Savannah sparrow. Both of those birds breed or nest at the wastewater. Field sparrow is another one that'll nest at the wastewater. Willets are migratory shorebirds, and once in a while you get a chance to see maybe one or two at a time, but not necessarily every year. Sometimes in the spring, sometimes in the fall. Reddy turnstone, you can see those out there. Killdeer also nest at the wastewater. This is a pectoral sandpiper. He's a spring and fall migrant. This looks like a pectoral, but it's a sharp-tailed sandpiper. And that's an Asian bird. They normally nest in Siberia, migrate to Australia and New Zealand. But there's a small population that uses the Alaska shoreline in the summer. And so far there's been, I know of 2 reported sightings at the wastewater. And I was out there talking to some people about the sharp-tailed sandpiper, and they were from Pennsylvania. When they heard about it, 3 of them jumped in the car and drove, I think it was 8-9 hours to get there so that they could see that bird. These are dowitchers, and there's 2 types. There's a long bill and a short bill, and it's very difficult to tell the difference. So I'm just going to call it a dowitcher. This spotted sandpiper is another one that nests out at the wastewater. American avocets migrate through generally in the fall, but sometimes in the spring. This great blue heron was flying right next to my vehicle. So I was driving down the dike road. I told the wife, I says, grab the steering wheel. So she grabbed the steering wheel. I used the pedal, she used the steering wheel, and I took the picture.
Oh.
So, sandhill cranes. To me, that's the sound of spring. You can hear that sound a long ways off. A couple more sandhills. I don't know that they nest at the wastewater, but you see them there frequently. Horned grebe, starting to get his full breeding plumage. Eared grebes, this is another one that's kind of hard to find, but they do show up at the wastewater. This is a bobolink. And this, remember I mentioned the dry cells? The bobolink will nest in that dry cell area. And then the next three birds will also nest in that same area. The grasshopper sparrow, upland sandpiper, and a dixis. So you can find all four of those species in that dry cell area. Also the eastern kingbird. Redheaded woodpeckers, kind of on the north edge of the wastewater. There's a road that goes around the north half of it, and you can sometimes find a redheaded woodpecker there. Blue jay, they're common, but this one's filling up his mouth with corn. He'll take it and hide it, and then he'll come back and get some more and hide that. American Pippit, these are generally fall migrators. I don't very often see them in the spring.
Migrating sparrows.
Oh, they're about the size of your house sparrow. Short-eared owl, they come, they're a winter visitor. Not real regular, but sometimes you'll see them there. Snowy owl, generally there's one or more at the wastewater every year. Another snowy owl. Snow bunting, they winter here. They come down. I think I'd keep going if I was a bird, if I had wings. I'd find someplace that didn't have snow. This is the common redpoll. It's normally up in Canada, but when there's food is scarce in Canada, they have what they call an eruption year. And this year was an eruption year for those, and they were all over. There was hundreds of them at the wastewater. Horned lark. This can be a migratory bird, but there are a few that will stay at the wastewater year round. We have had nests of the horned larks. Bonaparte's gull is another spring and fall migrator. This is bank swallows. They need a sheer cliff. They can't have grass on it. It has to be a sheer cliff to make their nests. This is a barn swallow, but it's leucistic. They normally don't have the white feathers on the back. It's like that dark purpley color. There's 5 species of swallows that you can find at the wastewater. You can the bank swallow, barn swallow, tree swallow, northern rough-winged swallow, and cliff swallow can be found at the wastewater. Okay. Find Waldo. There's 2 greater white-fronted geese in with the Canadas, the ones with the orange bills and the little white face patch. So they're more of a west of the Mississippi type goose, but some of them will stray this way. Okay, here's the northern pintail. Here's another migrator. This is a pair of northern shovelers. And this is a Wilson's phalarope. And what's unique about the Wilson's phalarope is it'll swim in circles to stir the water up, look for the bugs. And also the female will lay the eggs in the nest. The male will incubate the eggs and take care of the young, while the female goes off and tries to find another mate to start another nest. Blue-winged teal, female, male. Gadwall, the male is on the left. The female looks a lot like a hen mallard, but she has more white on her belly than the mallard. This is a Carner blue butterfly. I know it's not a bird. But the host plant for the Carner blue butterfly is wild lupin. That's the only plant that the caterpillar will eat. And the wastewater has several good areas of wild lupin. And it has a very good population of the Carner blue butterfly. All right, now we're going to start. We're going to go to Lane's Landing in State Game Area Headquarters. This is Lane's Landing. This is the State Game Area Headquarters. It's all part of the Muskegon State Game Area. The Walleye Ponds and Ferguson Farm are two other places. We're not going to talk specifically about those, but more about Lanes. On Lanes, there's a trail that goes out to the river. It's about a mile. And then at the Messenger Road headquarters, there's a trail found south of the river, goes out into a big marsh area in meadow. And there's also a trail that goes from one area to the other if you wanted to. But some years you need boots to do it because it gets pretty wet in there. So some of the birds you'd see there would be the American tree sparrow, eastern phoebe, eastern towhee, American woodcock. This guy was walking just real slow in front of my truck. So I let him get past me a little bit, got out, went around behind the truck and took his picture. Rough grouse. He was on a drumming log that was right next to the 2-track road that goes back to Lanes. So I happened to get this little toughness up because he knows we're there and he's a little bit panicked. This is a Mercenary Warbler, and they nest in the Lanes Landing area out towards the Muskegon River. Blue-winged warbler, Black-Burnian warbler, black-throated green warbler, black-pole warbler, blue-gray gnatcatcher, Wilson's warbler, chestnut-sided warbler, warbling vireo, American bitter. Now, most of the time you just hear these birds because they're very secretive. You don't always get a chance to see it. Same thing with the least bitter. You don't always get a chance to see them yet. More often you hear them. Hooded merganser, they're a cavity nester like a wood duck. So sometimes they compete for the wood duck boxes that are put up or the cavities in the trees. This is the wood ducks, male and female. It's not unusual to see a wood duck in a tree. Sora. There's another Sora. He's got a little bug in his beak. Swamp sparrow. Indigo bunting. Scarlet tanager. Barred owl. It's not unusual to see those in the daytime. Belly sapsucker. Again, this isn't a bird, but remember I was talking about that line where birds come from the south to the, to that Muskegon line. these plants are about as far, it's white trout lily. That's about as far north as they come in Michigan. So it's that same transition that the birds have, that it's also applies to plants. Now we're gonna talk about the Muskegon Channel, the south side, here Marquette Park, and also the Muskegon State Park. Just yesterday, up at this boat launch ramp, there was a little blue heron spotted. And it's very unusual for Muskegon County to have a little blue heron. So once it hit Eber, there's tons of people went up there quick to see it. 15 people reported it yesterday. So, but even here at this boat launch, there's a trail called the Lost Lake Trail that goes across Memorial Drive. And that goes through some real good habitat for warblers and stuff in the spring. So, and then down here,
Oops, sorry.
down here, there's another parking lot. And that's trails through the woods, again, for warblers. Okay. This is when the Muskegon Channel is good for birding. It's like this, the colder the better, the more ice the better. Because the ducks are concentrated in what open water you can find. These are long-tailed ducks. They only show up in the winter months. Not every day is a blustery day. This is the common goldeneye. This is a bunch of common goldeneyes. You'll notice the heads aren't green, but it just depends on how the light strikes the head. If the sun's on your head just right, it'll be green. Otherwise, it looks black. This is one male common goldeneye, 3 females. This is a red-throated loon. You'll notice that the beak is slender and the head is kind of tipped up. Now it's in the non-breeding plumage, so it's just this kind of gray, black and white. In the summer, it'll have a real dark red throat, it'll be a pretty gray bird. This is a common loon. Notice that the bill is thicker, his head is straighter, and it's a bigger bird too, but that's also a non-breeding plumage. This is a red-breasted merganser trying real hard to eat a crayfish. He had a difficult time with it because the crayfish wasn't going easy. This is red-breasted mergansers with a perch, and the 2 behind want the fish. He would dive and they chase each other. That lasted for about a minute, 2 minutes. Redneck grebe is another winter bird that will sometimes show up at the channel. This isn't a seagull. Seagull is a generic term that people use for just about any gull. This is a ring-billed gull. This is a great black-backed gull. It's a winter visitor. It's a great black-backed gull up front, a herring gull behind it. This is a glaucous gull. There's no black on it at all. The black duck with the orange bill in the center is a surf scoter. And there's 3 scoters that'll show up at the Muskegon Channel. And it's a black scoter, white ring scoter, and a surf scoter. And this happens to be the surf scoter. This is the greater scaup. Greater scaup in flight. Here's the white winged scoter. He's the only one that has that white patch of the scoters. A harlequin duck. Don't see very many of these. There was one there this year. Redhead, they're a common visitor in the winter. Flight of redheads. The female is, yeah, that one right there, that's the female. That's why she doesn't have that bright red head, because it's the female. This is a tundra swan. It's different than the mute swans that you see around it. They migrate through. Some years I've seen flocks of 300 or 400 at a time flying over. This is a Bohemian waxwing. And if you see the reddish color under here, that makes it the Bohemian. There's a cedar waxwing, and we'll see one a little bit later that has white under tail parts. This is a purple sandpiper. When they were first started being reported at Muskegon Channel on the break wall, a lot of the birders didn't believe that they were there, but they nest up in the tundra, and most of them will winter along the eastern seaboard. But what they like for habitat is wave-washed rocks, and that's what the pier is. There at Muskegon, wave-washed rocks. Holland, the same way. Grand Haven doesn't have the rocks, and I don't know that they've ever reported a purple sandpiper there. This is a piping plover, and it's an endangered species for the Great Lakes. Muskegon State Park has had a nest of piping plovers for about 5 years now. That's the baby.
Oh. My favorite.
Yeah, just a little fluff ball on toothpicks. Okay, now we're gonna go down here, Black Lake. This used to be called Little Black Lake, because up here at Mona Lake used to be called Black Lake. So when I was growing up, we always called this Little Black Lake. There, Norton Township, or city of Norton Shores, has a park on the very southern portion of Black Lake. And this is Wood Road. Pond Road would be up here. And what I like to do when I bird this is I park in here, come back out, walk down to the county drain and follow the drain around. Because this stretch of habitat right here is real good for birds. So then there's 2 observation areas where you can look out over the lake. There's one here, one up here, where they're only about 4 foot high, but it gives you a good chance to look at the lake, because in the spring, it's real good for waterfowl there. The scope is real helpful there because it's such a big lake, about 200 acres. It's an eastern bluebird. Appreciate the fact that the National Resources Trust Fund helped pay for the park. Red-shouldered hawk. Now, you have to be careful over a Little Black Lake when you hear a red-shouldered hawk. Sometimes it's not a red-shouldered hawk. There's some blue jays over there that can mimic that red-shouldered hawk.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, real good mimic. This is a brown creeper. Now here's the cedar waxwing. If you notice under the tail feathers there, that's white. So, golden crown kinglet. Golden crown kinglet. Common yellow throat. That's a very common warbler around here, and they like to be around water. Nashville Warbler generally migrates through spring and fall. Palm Warbler is another spring and fall migrator. Black and white warbler. Some of them might stick around for the summer. pine warbler, they've been known to nest at Black Lake Park. Yellow warbler, another one that likes that marshy habitat, the edge. White ground sparrow is a spring and fall bird that comes through. White-throated sparrow, the same. The chipping sparrow is a summer resident. Brown-headed cowbird. There's a lot of people don't like the brown-headed cowbird because they don't make their own nest. They lay their eggs in some other bird's nest. And the cowbird chick will push the other ones out of the nest. I've seen a chipping sparrow feeding this big old cowbird. It's really quite interesting. Northern cardinal. Northern shrike, generally somewhere around the lake. Just about every year you'll find a shrike. Northern flicker. There's quite a few turkeys over at that bird. White-eyed vireo. Now this is another one of those birds that's more southern. I've only seen it once at Black Lake Park. But yeah, we're getting pretty far north for those to show up. American goldfinch. Baltimore oriole. A pair of lesser skull. Dark-eyed junco. They normally start showing up mid-October. And they should be leaving here anytime soon now. I still have some at my bird feeder. Now, this hummingbird wasn't my intended object. I had seen a dragonfly flying out, catching a bug and coming back to a perch. We'd fly out, catch a bug, coming back to a perch. So I thought, well, I'll sit down along the bank and wait for that dragonfly to come back. I was sitting there real still, and I heard something buzz past my head, and it was this little hummingbird feeding on this cardinal flower. I was almost too close to take the picture, but he didn't seem to be bothered by me. This is the dragonfly that I was trying to take a picture of. If you look by the head, yeah, right there's a wing of the bug that he caught. All right, these pictures are only a few of the birds I photographed in these areas. In 2020, I identified 231 birds in Michigan. Because of COVID-19, most of these were seen in Muskegon County. You can bird anywhere in our county all year round, seeing birds even in your own backyard. We have hiking trails, bike trails, 3 state parks, county parks, nature preserves, piers, and roads. Visit areas in spring, summer, fall, and winter. You'll see birds migrating in spring and fall, and other birds showing up in different months. Some stay year round. That's the fun of bird watching. You can do it anywhere, anytime. If you keep your eyes open, you never know what you'll see. Does anybody have any questions about locations or anything like that? The one thing you might want to remember about the Muskegon or Lane's Landing, the Muskegon State Game Area, when you get down in there, the phone service is not very good. So if you get stuck, it could be a problem. So. Oh, yeah, wastewater, you have to have a permit to, but it's not hard to get it. You just call the wastewater and they'll give you one. Just tell them you're going to go there birding.
Yeah, so somebody's asking if they can bring their dog with them. Are there any places that they can't bring their dog to go
if they just wanted to walk their dog, they could do it on a leash at the wastewater,
Okay,
but they can't let it run.
Mhm.
But down at Lance Landing or Messenger Road, I see no problem on the state game area to allow the dog to run a little. That Black Lake Park dogs are supposed to be on a leash, but there's a lot of people that walk their dogs at Black Lake Park.
oh, she's on a leash, she's a little Louis Walker.
Question about cameras.
Oh yeah, what kind of camera lens do you use?
Right now, I'm shooting an Olympus camera with a 100 to 400 millimeter telephoto. That's what they call a 4/3 camera of the sensor. So that doubles that, the equivalent of the 35 millimeter. So it'd be like a 200 to 800 35 millimeter. So, but it's a compact and kind of lightweight. I've used Nikon cameras before too.
Use digital camera or film?
Well, digital. I couldn't afford to do the shooting that I do. I set my, when I'm taking the birds in flight pictures, I can shoot up to 18 frames a second.
Oh, wow.
So it wouldn't take me long to go through a roll of film.
Somebody's asking more about the dry cell area.
Okay,
Oh, yes. Let me find it a second.
What type of birds do you like the best while she's looking? What's your favorite?
well, my favorite bird is a little duck called a bufflehead. Just a cute little black and white duck. But
Sorry, guys. And I'll share that path in a second.
Where did you find the cliff structure?
down to the swallows, that's out to the wastewater.
Where?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's it.
Oh,
Card, whatever.
Number 9.
So they're just small holes.
Okay.
Right there.
there we go.
Was the question about the dry cell areas?
Yeah, I think they just want to see more.
Follow along, I think we're the mouse.
What did they want to know about the dress?
I think they were just looking to go kind of over the areas again in there.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Good spots.
This is Maple Island Road here. This is the entrance. And you just come in a little bit and you'll see the culverts, the cement culverts with some big gate valves. The valves are 3 feet tall. And that's the dry cells. And what they do is they put the water in there. The water will filter through the sand to help clean up any contaminants that are left in it. So sometimes the cells will have some water in them for maybe 4 or 5 hours or a day, and then they dry up again.
A place to find shorebirds,
Yeah,
when they have just a little bit of water themselves.
What time of day, commonly, go early or late in the afternoon?
it doesn't, the time of day usually doesn't matter for when they have water in those cells. They just pump it in there when they have to. Now, they just went through a major rehab of their gate valves and they replaced the ones that were leaking. Well, the ones that were leaking made perfect habitat for shorebirds. Because it was shallow water, there'd be water in there all the time. Since they've taken care of those gate valves, they don't have that anymore.
So they're also asking, do warblers tend only to come to areas with water?
No, certain warblers do. The common yellow throat, the yellow, They like the watery edge. Most of the others like the big tall trees. The oak and beech and stuff like that.
Do you use Lightroom or do you use Photoshop or anything for your?
I use Elements,
Oh, it's okay.
Adobe Elements 13. I have never invested the time in learning the other ones.
Okay.
I should, because you can really enhance your pictures and make them look better. So most of the stuff, I do a little bit of cloning to get out some distractions, but most of it's the way it came out of the camera.
Are there better times of day to bird watch?
Yeah, actually, morning, early morning, and then towards the late afternoon. But if you're going for waterfowl at the wastewater, they're gonna be there all the time. They're just gonna be in the big lagoons there. So,
Right.
Right around the lagoons, it's a 7-mile circle. around the two lagoons. And there's a dike in the center. Divides the two lagoons together. Right now, they've got that road closed off because the seagulls, right? The gulls are nesting
yeah, the ring-billed gulls are nested.
right on the dike.
And my brother and another guy count those nests.
Oh.
And they count anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 nests. Yeah,
So they're also asking if the waterfowl are at the wastewater kind of all year round. You can find different waterfowl there, or are there better times?
spring and fall are the best. Right now, if you want to see ruddy ducks, there's a big concentration, probably 1,000, 1,500 or more. Sometimes in the fall, there'll be thousands of northern shovelers. So but right now, there's a good mixture of ducks. The ponds at the wastewater do freeze over, the big ponds. So
So I have a question. So when you're doing the state game area and the wastewater, do you have to be careful during hunting season at all, or no?
yeah, starting Saturday, there'll be the spring turkey season starts, and that'll run off and on through the first week of June. But if you stay on the trails, you're not gonna run into any turkey hunters, and you won't spoil their hunting. So, because turkeys have to be real close to be shot at. So, you know, you're not gonna be accidentally shot at, somebody thinking you're a turkey. But you do have to realize that the hunters did pay for the state game area with a tax on their firearms and ammunition. So you wanna give them a break.
So somebody else is asking, is it safe for women to go bird watch alone out there?
I would be okay with the Messenger Road area, but Lane's Landing is a little different. I would feel more comfortable with having two people. Never had any trouble out there, but you have to understand you're out in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know.
And if you go out alone, it's always good to tell somebody where you're going so that
Right.
they know if you don't come home, if your car got stuck out at the wastewater or something.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with my vehicle there, and I've never had it broken into. There's been a couple times I've forgotten to roll the window up. I've locked the car but left the window down. So, but I've never had anything taken. So,
The bird houses, the bluebird houses.
yeah, there's about 400 bluebird houses on the wastewater. So, yeah, there's a certain number of them, I think about 50 or 60 that the wastewater monitors every year to try and figure out the nest, what's nesting and how many young ones survive and fledge and stuff like that. So
Do you always get the eastern bluebirds or the western bluebirds too, or?
it always Easter.
Is there a bird you really wanna photograph that you haven't been able to see yet?
Well, I don't think I have one that I really wanted to. What I really wanted to do was see that golden eagle this winter. But and get a good picture of it. But wasn't in the cards, so I'll have to wait until fall to try and see.
Excellent. Any last questions?
No, thanks a lot for.
Yeah, thank you
great
for
pictures and,
sharing.
Great description of where to find birds.
Oh, there's one last question. Do you use a tripod or a monopod when you photograph?
No, all my photographs are handheld.
Wow, is the
Yeah.
answer.
Steady.
Mhm.
Yeah, mine would be.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you to all of those of you who joined us online.